Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for an MP Wired for HR and Select Software Review sponsored webinar, Effective Strategies for Securing HR Software Buy-in. I'm Lauren Thompson, Marketing Programs Manager here at MPHR. We help our clients succeed by aligning their people strategy with their business goals. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started here today. If you would like to submit a question during the program, please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of the screen. We will be sending out a recording of the webinar after the presentation along with the slides. During our presentation, we will be asking you to participate in several polls. They will pop up on your screen for you to answer and participate in. Here to introduce our guest for today's program is MPHR's Vice President of Marketing, Rachel Weeks.
Thanks, Lauren, and hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're really excited to be here. If I could tell you a little bit about MP Wired for HR. I'm Rachel Weeks, as Lauren said. Thank you. I'm the Vice President of Marketing for MP Wired for HR, and I'm joined today by our partner, Phil Strazzulla from Select Software Reviews. Welcome, Phil.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. Just a little bit about MP Wired for HR. We combine proven human capital management technology with expert HR services and professional talent acquisition, along with white glove support to help small and medium-sized companies optimize their HR function. We're really proud of our client satisfaction and client retention rates, as well as some of the awards that we've been recognized with as a company. And one of the other things that we're really proud of are the partners that we work with. And so this is our opportunity to work with Select Software Reviews. And we'll turn it over to Phil to tell us more about SSR. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for having us. And thanks to everybody for joining and participating. As Lauren mentioned, we've got a couple of polls, and we've got a number of slides to get through to really talk about the importance of HR tech and how to buy it right. A little bit about SSR. It's a business that I started back in 2018. Our North Star is to help HR and recruiting professionals find and buy the right HR technology. So this is everything from applicant tracking systems, HRIS, payroll, EOR, performance management, you name it. We've done a tremendous amount of research across the last 6 or 7 years. We have a team of ex-HR and recruiting professionals that do demos, talk to users. They write up their own opinions, and then we also get user opinions to put together really rock-solid content if you're out there looking for technology. And what we started doing back in January is allowing people to book time with members of our staff who are experts for free consultation. So you can literally book a time with somebody on our team and say, hey, I'm this type of company. Here's the pain point. Here's what we're looking for. Who should we be talking to? How should I think about budgeting, internal stakeholder management? A lot of the stuff that we're going to go through today, we can have a tailored conversation to help you get in the right direction, hopefully save you some time and money. And again, that offering is 100% free. We kind of do it to promote ourselves, our brand, build the community. So please take advantage of it. My background is I started my career off working in venture capital at a fund called Bessemer Venture Partners. Before getting my MBA at Harvard Business School, I taught myself how to program. I started an HR tech company in the employer branding niche. And then I started SSR in 2018 because I just saw that buying the right tech is super hard, and I wanted to make it easier. And so we started this company, and around 100,000 businesses a month now use our research in one form or another to find and buy the right HR tech. Again, we've got some polls. Please feel free to interrupt me with any questions throughout this. I'll be keeping my eye on the Q&A and the chat. And Lauren, if you don't mind, if somebody asks a question throughout this and I don't see it, please just let me know. And I'd love to talk about whatever the folks on the phone want to talk about. In lieu of questions, and by the way, we're going to have tons of time for Q&A at the end as well. This is sort of the agenda that I wanted to walk through today. So first and foremost, the importance of HR technology for modern organizations. Why are we on the phone? Why do we care about this, spending headspace and time and efforts on it? Common challenges of getting leadership buy-in, as well as some tactics around how do you go about this effectively. There's a couple of specific tactics that I found work really, really well when you're trying to get the CFO, CEO, COO, maybe the head of HR to kind of buy into what you want to do. How do you build that business case? How do you overcome objections and barriers when you're trying to get something done? How do you identify the right HR technologies? There's 30,000 vendors that we track out there in the ecosystem. Maybe there's a few that we've missed out there, but the point is there are so many vendors in the ecosystem. It's hard to kind of wade through and understand who are the 3 or 4 that I should be looking at when I want to go and select my next HR technology. How do we think about the ROI of all of this stuff, relating this back to the business case and our internal stakeholder management, so that when we need to get that next solution or that next initiative in general, we are in good standing with the powers that be, with the purse strings. And of course, we're going to have a healthy amount of time at the end of this for questions and answers. So with that, let's jump into our first poll question here. And you can answer this directly in Zoom. You should see the poll popping up here. The question is, where do you find out about new HR solutions? Is it Google? Is it online review websites? Is it peers/networking? Is it industry analysts or other? And if it's other, or you've got something specific to share, please drop it in the chat. If there's a particular review website, peer networking group that you really like, an industry analyst that you think is awesome, or if there's something else that's in that other category that we're not capturing in the answers here, please drop that into the chat. It'd be super interesting to kind of see what people are actually using for this sort of research. We're getting a few answers come in. Thank you guys so much. I'll give it another couple of seconds here before looking at what the answers are here. So it looks like there's a bit of a cluster here. Nobody's really using Google or online review sites. Most people are relying on their networks. That's pretty interesting. Not that unsurprising, actually. I think a lot of folks, what we find, will text former colleagues, or they'll go into, maybe the NERA community, or, whatever sort of SHRM chapter you're in, and say, hey, we're looking at XYZ vendor, or we're thinking about this sort of solution. What do you think we should be looking about? What do you think we should be thinking about? Yeah, Rachel, I'm super curious too, if there's anybody out there that answered industry analysts. Who are those industry analysts? I would love to know. Maybe it's somebody that I'm not following yet, and I would really appreciate learning about somebody that I should be following. So thank you all for answering that question. Let's jump into the importance of HR technology in today's landscape. There's a couple of main bullet points here. I'd also like to share a story or two, because I think for me, that's just sort of how I understand a lot of this subject matter. But the bullet points here are digitalization and automation of HR processes. So the story that I am thinking about is a company that we talked to a month or two back. The head of HR called us up. This is one of these chats people have with folks on our team. And they said, we've got this manufacturing company in Michigan. It's about 500 employees. We've got 3 different buildings. And at the end of the week, somebody goes around and collects these paper time cards and puts them into a computer. And then somebody else puts them into another system that eventually runs payroll. And we were able to introduce that person to a couple of payroll providers. And I think they just sort of launched this in the last week or so. And it's been a game changer, right? You can automate something like that. And that's sort of like a crazy example of like literally going from pen and paper. But I think a lot of folks they're using spreadsheets, they're using outdated systems, and changing it up to something that has automation built in, maybe some layer of artificial intelligence. We can talk about that. If folks have questions about sort of the use cases and how that's filtering into the ecosystem. That could be a huge game changer for folks. Enhancing employee experience and engagement. The world of employee recognition, of whole surveys of performance management systems that have been shown to increase retention rates, increase engagement, especially in a world of remote work, are very plentiful. And I think there's a lot out there that you can be looking at. Data-driven decision making, obviously, the boards of today, the executive teams of today, they want to see the data behind everything. And being armed with that is essential in making any sort of business case, which we'll get into in a couple of slides here. Talent acquisition and retention. It's amazing the automation that's happening in talent acquisition right now. There's a solution that we looked at a couple of months ago where you literally upload a job rec. It reads the job rec. It says, okay, it seems like for this sort of opening, you're looking at Java engineers in Boston that have at least 5 years of experience and this sort of salary expectation. We just create a list of 50 of these people from LinkedIn and GitHub and all these places, and we're going to email them. And then the people that respond positively, we're going to put on your recruiter's calendar for a phone screen. That's incredible. That shortens the sourcing, the amount of work that has to happen from hours and hours down to less than an hour. And it shortens the timeline of building that pipeline from maybe a week or two to a couple of minutes. And so that's going to drastically decrease your time to fill. And then, of course, all the fun stuff, compliance and risk management that you just kind of got to stay on top of, or else you're opening yourself up to a lot of liability. With that, let's get into the second poll question here. What is the most challenging part of buying HR software? Everybody's on the phone here for a reason, and I'm super curious to know what are the biggest pain points. Differentiating solutions from each other. Again, that landscape of 30,000 vendors. How do you make sense of it? Securing budget. How do you get the CFO, COO, et cetera, to buy in and say, yeah, here's the money. Team alignment on goals, executive sponsorship, or other. And again, if you are putting in other here, or you've got more color to provide beyond just what you selected as your answer, please feel free to drop it in the chat. I'm super curious. I'm always trying to learn about how folks buy software, how we can do better at our jobs. But also I'm sure other folks on the phone as well would be interested to see the results and what people are sort of struggling with when it comes to HR tech. And there's a lot to struggle with. There's a whole host of things throughout the process. Hopefully we'll give you some tools and tricks to do a good job today. But yeah. Okay. Super interesting. So most people are in the differentiating solutions from each other camp, and then a bit on the executive sponsorship, internal stakeholder management camp. Again, if you get more color to add beyond your answer, please drop it in the chat. But I love this because, one, this is what we do for a living. We help people sort of differentiate. But it is so challenging. And it actually makes me think of somebody that I met at the Tri-State SHRM conference a few weeks ago down in Connecticut. And they're looking at a new HRIS. And they gave me the companies. There are 7 companies that they're talking to, which in my opinion is probably too many. Just too much to keep track of, too much work. And I said, how did you build this list? Because there's 2 or 3 here that are actually a good fit for your size company, what you're looking for. And to be honest with you, probably at least half the list, maybe a bit more, they're fine companies, but they're just not what you're doing. And the woman said, candidly, I did a Google search, and then I'm on Instagram a lot, and my Instagram ads just started becoming HR technology. And I just signed up for demos. I basically signed up for every company that was in my Instagram feed. And I thought that was interesting. I don't think, honestly, that's like not the worst way to build a short list that I've ever heard. But it also just speaks to the challenge of understanding a company, even if you look at their website, even if you talk honestly to their salesperson, and understanding, hey, this is really a performance management company versus an HRIS, or this is really an ATS with some core HR features, but it's not what we need. So this stuff is definitely tough. And we'll get to the executive sponsorship aspect of things too, because I think that can save you a heck of a lot of time if you do it right. So let's kind of jump into that right now, because I've seen so many HR professionals that do a lot of work, and at the finish line, they can't sign the contract because it's like, well, the budget went away, or some maybe wishy-washy answer from the sort of powers that be. And to me, that can be a result of not getting the proper buy-in from the rest of your company throughout this process. So there's a couple of different tactics here. I'm going to talk about one right now and one in a few minutes. So there's this woman, Stacy Justice, who shared this with me a couple of years ago. She's the head of people ops. She's been a head of people ops for a couple of different faster growth technology companies. And I remember distinctly she was buying a performance management system. And what she did was she said, hey, everybody in the company, I'm buying a performance management system for XYZ reasons. I'm in the early stages of figuring this out. If you want to help me out on this, let me know. And I think she put it in Slack or maybe an email or some sort of internal message board. And she got a couple of people that raised their hand and said, you know what, I really care about our culture and I want to help out. I'm happy to carve out 1 or 2 hours per week or per month to help you out in this process over the next 3 to 4 months. And the type of person who's raising their hand for that, they're somebody who's taking on extra work. So they're not the slackers of the company, right? Like these people are people who are like, yes, like I care about the company culture. I'm the director of sales, but I'm also going to do this extra thing because I actually care. That type of person is going to help you to find the right solutions to the problem. Um, from a couple perspectives. One, they're just high power, but two, there's diversity of thought when you have somebody from sales, somebody from product, somebody from operations that comes in and is almost like your board of advisors throughout this project. And it's not somebody probably who's going to sit in on every demo or go through the nitty gritty of a contract, but it's somebody who's going to help you with the initial brainstorming of, hey, we've got this problem. Here are the potential solutions. They're going to help leverage their networks to maybe build out some of this vendor selection stuff. And the most important thing, in my opinion, is that 3 months later, when you're about to sign that contract and you need the CFO to say, yep, we're going to spend X, Y, Z amount of money on this for the next year, they're going to go to bat for you if you need that extra juice at the end. And again, think about that director of sales who's doing this for you. They're a rising star, they're a known commodity, they're doing amazing, they're taking on extra work. When the CFO waffles and that director of sales comes in and says, you know what, I've been helping Phil out for the last 3 months on this project. It's super thoughtful. We did all the work. This is important to me. And the person in product and the person in operations, we got to do this. You're going to get the money for that 100% of the time. And so this cross-functional buying committee is sort of the convoluted MBA term that I usually talk about this tactic with, is actually super powerful to not only get that diversity of thought and the better solutions, but also to get the juice for actually signing the contract and getting the budget. And then three, for something that employees need to engage with, and implementation. So, and evangelizing throughout the employee base when you implement. So think about performance management, my friend Stacy here. People need to use performance management systems for them to be impactful. So you need people in sales and product and operations and all the groups to actually sign up, buy in, put their goals in, start using this platform for their one-on-ones, their OKRs, et cetera. And having that director of sales say, hey, everybody, I was a part of this project. You just got an email from HR or people operations. But here's why I think this is amazing. We got to do this in the sales org. Everybody should be on board for this. That is another layer that allows you to be successful with this project. So that's my best piece of advice for this sort of internal stakeholder management, getting that leadership buy-in problem. Building a business case. This is something that I personally, this is like, one of the more fun aspects of buying software. You're probably like, wow, this guy's such a weirdo. Buying software, first of all, isn't fun, and dealing with spreadsheets and business cases definitely is not fun. But I just love it. I'm a finance nerd, and I think that any large initiative in a company needs to be backed up by data and data that ties to the P&L of the business. Why are we doing this? Are we increasing revenues? Are we increasing profitability? Maybe a combination of the two. If not, it's hard to justify. And if not, then you as a sort of selfish individual should probably not be spending time on it because it's not going to allow you to achieve your goals and kind of get to the next level in your career. And so when we take a step back, talk about what I think a business case is in the first place, it's articulating through data and through numbers the return on investment from a new initiative. So let's think about your career website. Let's say your career website isn't mobile optimized, looks like it was designed in 1999, and you're pretty sure that many candidates who get there are bouncing, they're not applying, and you're losing talent that way. Let's say 1,000 people a month go to your career site and you only get 50 applicants. So you have a 50 over 1,000 or 5% conversion rate. And you want to update your career website and it's going to cost $10,000. The business case here would be, okay, can we get that 5% conversion rate, 50 people applying for jobs out of 1,000 visitors? Can we get that to 100? Can we get it to 150, 200? And if you can, what does that imply about hires? What does that imply about time to fill? Maybe we can save a recruiter fee per month. Maybe our time to fill goes down by 10 days for salespeople. And so that means our effective number of sales folks in the organization increases by 4% and they do X amount of revenue. And therefore, there's an ROI on that $10,000. That's what I'm talking about when I talk about business cases. And I think they're important to understand what you should be focused on. They're important for internal alignment, but they're also important because they're a little bit like a time capsule or a journal entry. They are an articulation of what you think the end result will be from an initiative at a given point in time. And 6 months later, when you update your career website and you go through this whole project, you should go back and look at that business case and say, we thought we would get 200 applicants a month, but we actually ended up getting 300 applicants a month. And not only that, but the incremental applicants that we got, they're actually higher quality because those 50 people, they were just never that great. They were people who were applying for anything. And the people we need to convince with a better career website, they actually were the people we ended up hiring. And so we saved 3 recruiter fees per month. And that 1,000 people a month that we were getting to the career website, that actually doubled because it was more of an attraction and it SEO'd better and it was mobile optimized and all these things. And so it's really interesting to go back and read those business cases again and say, where was I right? Where was I wrong? That's also really important. And that just helps you become a better operator over time. And so I can't say enough how much I think folks should really do a good job on business cases. And we even have a whole section of our website that's just me. I built out all these spreadsheets for, time to fill calculations. If we're buying a new ATS, what's the ROI from that? Career website, all this stuff with spreadsheets, with videos explaining the spreadsheets. So if you want to go deep on that stuff, feel free to use those as a resource. Feel free to send me a message and say, hey, Phil, I'm trying to do X, Y, Z. I don't even know where to start. Happy to try to point you in the right direction. But can't say enough how important it is for your own personal development as well as to get that buy-in. Let's talk about overcoming objections and barriers. So another tactic that I like to use when buying HR technology is what I call the HR Tech Roadshow. And I actually helped a friend of mine do this a couple of years ago. It's a company that is unfortunately now famous for all the wrong reasons. So my friend became the head of talent acquisition at Better Mortgage, which is now famous because the guy fired everybody over Zoom. And at the time, my friend joined, it was a 200-person company, and they wanted to get to 3,000 in the next 18 months. And he basically said, hey, Phil, I'm a little bit over my head. Can you come help me out just 10 hours a week sort of thing? Let's get the talent pipeline set up. Let's get our ATS and CRM humming, all this stuff. And I said, sounds great. I was just starting my business at the time, and I wanted to pick up a consulting project to sort of bridge our cash flow before we started actually becoming a business. And so one of the core things we did was we basically built out a strategy in a PowerPoint presentation that was like, hey, here's the problem. We're going to 10x growth of headcount in a very short amount of time. Right now, here are our sources. Here's what we need to do. We need to have a better career website. We need to have microsites for all the different talent personas. We need to spend a ton of money on LinkedIn for recruiters, for CPC ads. We need to spend money on Indeed. We need to hire these recruiters, et cetera. Basically, here's the whole plan. And then we sat down with the CEO, the CTO, the everybody one-on-one, and we just walked them through 25 minutes. It was a short part of their day, just to keep them in the loop. It's an important part of the business. If you don't 10x, you can't 10x revenues. It's a very people-heavy business. But we just got their buy-in. They were like, hey, sounds good. You guys seem like you know what you're doing. Why was this important? Because along the way, there were lots of times where we needed those C-level people to break down barriers. So the best example was we were going to have a PR placement in some local paper in Charlotte, but it was like the local paper. And so we thought we would get like a few 100,000 views on this one PR placement about how we were going to hire X amount of people in the Charlotte area over the next year. And what we wanted to do was we wanted to capture all of those people attention and get them into a talent pipeline, because most of the people who are going to read this are not active applicants. They don't have a resume. They're just reading the newspaper or they're reading it digitally. And we wanted to say, hey, if you're interested in working for us, you don't have to apply into our ATS. You don't need a resume. Just put your email in here and we're going to keep you abreast of what's going on. In order to build that microsite, I remember it was like 7 o'clock the night before it went live that we found out about this. We needed to have access to the website. We need to build out a landing page on the better.com domain in a couple of hours. And so we emailed the CTO and said, hey, here's what we got to do. And 45 minutes later, it was done. If we didn't have that internal stakeholder buy-in, no way it would have happened. And I think we got like 10 or so thousand email addresses from that one PR placement that we otherwise wouldn't have. And how many of those people became hires? I don't know the answer to that, but it's probably hundreds. And you think about the cost per hire, that one landing page probably saved the company 6 figures and wouldn't have gotten done if we didn't have that internal stakeholder buy-in. This is sort of an extreme example in a super hyper growth company. But I think that the same HR Tech Roadshow tactic can be deployed for, we're buying a new HRIS. Why are we buying a new HRIS? Here are the problems. Here are the potential solutions. Here's the timeline. Here's basically everything we know about this project. Let's talk to the CEO for 20 minutes. Let's talk to the COO for 20 minutes. Just get their buy-in, keep them abreast of the project. And again, this allows you to get the budget, get the support for implementation, everything else you need along the way. All right. Let's talk about identifying the right HR tech solutions. This is, our bread and butter. That's why our business is called Select Software. So there's so many solutions out there, 30,000 vendors. It's so difficult to understand where you should be spending your time. And I think our first poll where it was like, hey, where do you do the research? Each of those avenues of attack are valid. You could go to Google, you could go to review websites, you could ask your peers, you could follow industry analysts, but each of them have their own flaws as well. So Google, SEO super gamed, the top 4 results are paid results. Review websites, if you go on G2, type in lever versus greenhouse G2. One of them is a 4.7, one of them is a 4.6. What does that even mean? Is it a 4.6 for 500-person manufacturing company in Michigan? Maybe it's a 1.0 for that, but it's a 5.0 for fast-growing tech company. Industry analysts are also, sometimes it's pay to play. Sometimes they're really focused on enterprise and they don't really talk about, hey, what I'm talking about is for the biggest companies in the world. And then your peers who are amazing, they might have had an idiosyncratic good or bad experience with a vendor. Somebody has an awesome rep at ADP. Somebody has a horrible rep at ADP. Somebody's a raving fanatic about it, and somebody is too in the exact opposite way. So it's really hard to parse through what is the right thing to do. My recommendation is to book a time with us 100%. But what I would do in absence of that is take really good notes. You want to talk to 2 to 4 vendors ideally, and you want to list out here are our 10 must-have criteria, certain integrations that you need, certain workflows. Here are the nice to haves. Here's the pricing for each. And then here's what I think about the sort of reputation of the company slash the sales rep that I'm talking to. Put that in a spreadsheet, and then the columns are each of the vendors, and just keep really good notes as you talk to these. That last point about the sales rep is actually really important. And it took me a while to kind of figure this out. But if you think about the best sales reps, they can work anywhere. All they got to do is show up to a company and say, hey, here's my comp plan. Here's what I did last year. Hire me. I hit quota. And what do they want to do? They want to keep hitting quota. How do you do that? You work for a company that has a really good marketing function and a really good product. And so if you're talking to a sales rep who is super responsive, super knowledgeable, knows their stuff, they're probably really good and they're choosing to work at that company for a reason. And the opposite is true as well. Companies that don't have the right infrastructure for having an amazing product, for having a good account management, they're not going to be able to attract and retain the right quality of sales rep. So a bit counterintuitive, but definitely pay attention to that when you are out there buying software. All right, another poll question. What sort of solution are you looking for next? So right now, why are you here? Or perhaps what are you thinking about for the next 12 months? Is it applicant tracking system, ATS? Is it an HRIS? Is it HCM? HCM would sort of be, ATS plus HRIS plus probably payroll. Maybe it's all of the above. Or is it other? Let us know. And if you've got further color, feel free to throw it in the chat. Super curious to hear kind of what people are in market for right now. What's top of mind? I'll use this as a chance to take a sip of water too. And then just a reminder, we've got a couple more slides and then Q&A. So if you've got questions, feel free to start thinking about those or drop them in the Q&A. So looks like HRIS is sort of number one and slash all of the above, and then a bit of ATS as well. Yeah, that's sort of what we find. HRIS, we actually just did a whole study about this. We're going to release probably tomorrow. And we just analyzed the few hundred people that we've talked to in the last couple of months. And HRIS is by far the thing that people are looking for, especially for SMBs, less than, call it 500 employees. It makes sense to have one sort of unified system. And then if you're recruiting a ton, usually your HRIS is going to have some recruiting functionality, or they might partner with or white label a best-in-class ATS. And then if you sort of go into that mode where you need a dedicated applicant tracking system, then that's kind of a whole nother can of worms and can be a real asset, especially for growing businesses that need that specific functionality. But the HRIS is definitely the place to start. And it's good to see most folks are looking at that. Let's talk about the ROI of HR technology. And this relates closely to the business case. So there's a couple of key points here. One is, how do you articulate ROI? One pointer is it's got to relate to something the CFO cares about. I don't know what your CFO is like, but let's just pretend there's some sort of like cold-hearted capitalist. They don't care about, people, and they don't care how pretty the career website looks or people feeling good about coming to work. All they care about is the P&L. The good news is you can translate how people feel about coming to work or how pretty the career website is to dollars and cents, right? As we just talked about with the career website, hey, better looking career website. We're going to convince the people that need to be convinced, who are therefore the better applicants, to become applicants, get into our hiring funnel, become colleagues, and therefore better looking career website translates into lower cost per hire, lower time to fill. Lower cost per hire is pretty straightforward in terms of translating into dollars and cents. We save money per hire. We made this many hires. That's the money saved. Time to fill is slightly less intuitive. There is a whole video about this on our website. I won't get into the nitty gritty, but effectively each employee at the company, they bring a value to the company. Otherwise, they wouldn't be there. The value is probably, it depends on the type of employee, but you can say it's 2 to 3x their salary. And so each person, every day that they're in there faster, you can say, hey, we basically have an extra 200 employee days this year, and our average employee makes $300 a day, and so therefore, I don't know, can't do the math in my head. That's $60,000 of salary, and so let's say it's 100 and so thousand dollars of ROI. I think the other sort of big way to drive ROI from people ops perspective is looking at retention. Retained employees, there's lots of studies out there. I think Deloitte has the best one around how much retained employees contribute to the value of the business, and vice versa, how much it actually costs to replace somebody in terms of culture, historical knowledge, etc. So those are all sort of like the key points when actually creating the ROI. A couple of things here. One is, again, go back, review that business case, understand how was I right, how was I wrong. And then two is write up a bit of a post-mortem on your project. So it's 6 months after we launched our new career website. Here's what the traffic did. Here's what our conversion rate did. Here's the applicants. Here are our hires. Hopefully, here's our cost per hire and how that changed. Here's the money that we saved, and brag about it. I think that HR professionals, like, for the most part, so busy, so overworked, hair on fire, always doing this. It's hard to take a step back and say, hey, I did this. We did a great job. Here's the stuff we learned. We didn't figure this out and this out. It took 3 weeks longer than we thought. We didn't know, the testimonial videos would be X, Y, Z. But put that together for yourself as well as the rest of the business to learn from. And it's sort of a subtle brag, right? And so the next time that you want to implement something, you want to overhaul your DEI strategy, you want to implement that performance management system, you need a new ATS, you want to update your HRIS, whatever the case may be, there's this idea in the back of the executive's head of, they did that presentation that articulated why they were doing it. They did a business case. They did a post-mortem. They're just on top of it. And so these barriers of internal stakeholder management break down really fast when you're able to do that appropriately. All right, let's get into one last poll, and then we're going to go into Q&A here. So the last poll question: how satisfied are you with your payroll provider? And I would include it's like payroll / HRIS, probably. Very dissatisfied, dissatisfied, neutral, satisfied, very satisfied. I'm very curious to see the answers to this question. All right, so pretty much in the middle. Nobody with absolute hatred at this point. No, very dissatisfied. Some neutral, satisfied. Nobody through the moon about their payroll provider. I think that's about right. It's sort of like, hey, we want this to work. We want to cross the T's from a legal and compliance perspective. We, hire or fire somebody in state of California, state of New York, whatever. Like, we want them to tell us what we need to do there. And yeah. So with all that, Hey, Lauren. Good to
Hi
see you
there.
again. We'll open it up to questions, and please, anything that's on your mind, let me know. Would love to illuminate anything that I can.
Great. Well, we have a few questions to get us started. And everybody, just as a reminder, if you'd like to ask Phil or Rachel any questions, just go ahead and use that Q&A function at the bottom of your screen there. So the first question we have is, how quickly would I be able to put a proper case comparison of solutions together before I'm able to present internally?
That's a good question. I think that you want to give yourself a good amount of buffer. I would say, you want to give yourself in a very ideal scenario, you kind of want to know, hey, we're going to be looking at a solution over the next 4 to 6 weeks. I want to build that short list. I want to, the people that I'm talking to at a conference, the things that hit my inbox, the peers that I'm going to run into or have coffee with, I want to pick their brain about it a little bit. Um, you could put together a short list in an hour. That could be pretty good if you kind of know what you're doing. You're going to want to give yourself at least 2 to 3 weeks to do those demos and take notes, just because there's going to be scheduling conflicts, things that come up, especially if you're in a smaller HR team, last minute. And you're going to want to give yourself at least a week, to sort of digest, put your notes together, and then put it into a digestible format. I think that's so key. We're all so busy. We've all got a million things in our heads, and you need to have a couple of slides that articulate what you're doing, to the internal stakeholders that matter.
Great, thank you. Moving on to our next question. Should I rely on a representative from the tech company to help me present information, or should I keep it internal?
I would err on probably not having that person in the meeting with you, because they just have such a strong incentive. And no matter how much trust you have with that person, if you are meeting with your COO, and you bring the rep in, um, it's an opportunity for them. It's just hard because their incentive is so strong to sell. Um, they're they're going to be biased with the information that they present, and it doesn't allow you to have, the most productive conversation with your colleague. That said, I would say that the vast majority of reps are amazing sources of information. So, you have to realize, hey, they're biased, and I think the best ones will say, I'm biased, right? And here's my take, and here's where I might be right or wrong. But realistically, they're going to know their solution better than anybody, and they're probably going to know their competitors' solutions too, because all day long they're talking to folks like yourself about using them versus a competitor. And so you got to push them, you got to ask the right questions, you got to get to specifics and sort of sanity check everything. But they can be amazing, maybe even the best sources of information, when you're making these decisions.
Great. And we have one final question here. You started to touch on it in the first one, but I'm going to ask you, what mediums or tactics do you find helpful to present the case for technology more efficiently?
Yeah, I think the HR Tech Roadshow is really strong, putting together that presentation. I think the sort of cross-functional buying committee is really impactful and can give you a couple of strong allies that can help you do a better job and learn, but also go to bat for you if you need them to. And then I think having a strong business case is really essential. And one of the tactics I didn't talk about, I just sort of omitted it. But if you are like, hey, I don't really know what I'm doing here with this business case stuff, find somebody in your company who does. Find somebody who has an MBA. Maybe they're in the finance group, maybe we're in the strategy group, and just say, look, here's what I'm trying to do. Here's how I'm thinking about it. Can you help me understand how to put this into a spreadsheet in a way that gets me to an ROI that XYZ person is going to say, yes, that makes sense. And I think that if you work in the right company, which hopefully you do, you're going to find somebody who says, yeah, of course, I'll help you out.
Right. We have another question that came through. Which are some of the challenges associated with having a widely distributed workforce, and how would a manager ensure there's cohesiveness within such a team?
Yes. Thanks, Joseph, for the question. And I'm going to assume that you're talking about an remote team when you say widely distributed workforce. So what I found a couple of things. One is you have to have really amazing SOPs around communication, especially people who are in different time zones, because if somebody asks for something and they live in Europe and they got to wait for somebody in Australia, you can waste cycles, you can waste days getting the right answer if somebody's asked something that's not clear or doesn't have all the right context or information. So I think you need SOPs with examples. Zapier, GitLab, and a couple other remote-only companies have written up their how they manage distributed teams. And those are businesses that have scaled to multi-billion-dollar valuations, hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue with remote-only teams. So they figured out all the nuts and bolts. Another piece of technology that I would highly recommend is performance management software, something that allows everybody to kind of see in a telescopic way, what does the company care about? What does my group care about? What does my team care about? What do I care about? And make sure that everybody's just aligned throughout the company and knows what to be talking about when they have those one-on-ones or they have those, monthly team meetings or whatever it is.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Phil and Rachel. To learn more about MPHR and Select Software Review's full service solutions for 2024 and more, you can visit our websites at mp-hr.com and selectsoftwarereviews.com for more information. Select Software Reviews invites you for a personalized HR tech advice and recommendations from a Select Software Reviews resident HR tech experts, completely free of charge. Book your free HR tech consultation today with the link in the chat. Be sure to join MPHR for our upcoming webinar, HR Legislative Update, Navigating the Changing Landscape. Visit our website to register and see the full calendar of upcoming events and available resources. Once again, we will be sending out a recording of today's webinar with a presentation slide shortly. Thank you very much to all of our presenters and our audience, and have a terrific day.
Thanks, everybody.